So let's talk about my experience of returning to Mexico this time. This happened to be my third time. And this time it was very striking for me to be able to understand the meaning of, the skulls, the skull motifs
Yes.
that you can see a lot in Mexico. And when I first went to Mexico in 2015, I could see them, but I couldn't really relate myself to it. Like, why are you using so much skulls there? And then skulls dancing and singing and wearing dresses and then all that. So, but this time, especially after my experience of relocating back home from UK to Japan, I could realize it was actually speaking about our mortality, the perception of mortality. So, yeah, and then you told me this poem about, mortality. What was it?
This is it's part of the Mexican culture.
Mm-hmm.
The skull, we called it the calavera, specifically called la Catrina,
Calaveras. La
la
Catrina.
calavera, but la Catrina. So la
Uh-huh.
Catrina is almost here in Mexico a reflection of, yes, in a way, that Memento Mori,
Uh-huh.
but it's just got
Oh,
into my
yes.
mind.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
It's just like, all through the time of my
Mm-hmm.
life, I heard a
Mm,
word that was whispering to me,
mm,
live, live,
mm,
live.
mm.
And it was death
Yeah.
who was whispering in my ear.
Basically, I never ever thought about memento mori or my perception of mortality at all. I think many people are like that. We just take advantage of being and then, sort of, uh, being capable to do all kinds of things every day. And then it was
Mm,
me. But the thing is, when I experienced the lockdown a few years ago in UK,
right.
I felt very disconnected from the world. And
Mm,
I felt it's like everybody else was around, and everybody else was around, but I felt like I was very, left alone on a sort of strange planet or something. And
mm,
then also it struck me the insecurity that I felt that I won't be able to see my family and friends if they are
mm,
passing in time because of the situation. And then it never occurred to me. It was always like living in abroad. I always could get on the airplane and then go home whenever I have to in within 24 hours or something. But it wasn't like that. And and then I started to look into myself. So what am I really feeling uh insecure about? What am I really afraid of? And then I realized it was not necessarily myself dying, but more like being left behind, losing everybody else. And that was
mm,
more
mm,
scary. And
mm,
then all these things, it just came to me like waves.
mm,
And then I looked into it more and more. And then it was at the end of the day that seemed to have forgotten that I as well as everybody else around me, not only my family or like every person that I met in contact with, everybody is going to die one day.
mm,
And then me too. I'm part of it. And that allowed me to shift in a way. Um, this is still happening within myself
yes.
as a change. So I can't really tell you the conclusion, but
Mm.
that's the kind of experience that I did.
So I can imagine it must have been very interesting when you came to Mexico and you saw the
Mm.
skulls, you
Yeah.
know.
Since I checked my mortality, the perception of mortality, my perception of, it felt more grounded. and it felt more kind of connected to
Mm.
to this world where I belong to. It felt
Yeah.
more safer to be in my body and in this world in a strange way.
It really connects us with our passion, with our sense of like intention,
Hmm.
and align us to different uh, to a purpose. Not
Hmm.
that a purpose is like the main thing in life, because having a purpose can also be like a trap in a way, you know. But it's
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
being present with life itself, that it gives us more depth, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
remember I remember a person telling me, you know, one of the things that stop her from, you know, you know, just finishing life was like,
Hmm.
that moment was like, who's gonna feed my fish? That was honestly,
Yeah.
that was the aha moment, like, wait a minute, you know.
Hmm.
So who's gonna feed my fish? And I've
Hmm.
heard this many times, and I was like,
Hmm.
who's gonna take care of my dog? You know,
Hmm.
so that realization is like, wait a minute, you know, I have something, you know, to do
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
this earth.
Yeah,
And
yeah. And that is
yeah,
like a seeing yourself as a not like a completely stand-alone existence in this world.
no,
It's more
not
like,
at all.
you're connected to everything and everyone in a way. And so
What can I ask you? What was your realization like
hmm.
that you noticed that you were connected to
Hmm.
everything?
This is my experience when I was in my mid-20. I was working at the place, and then on the day I started working, there's a woman who is almost double my age, like almost like my parents. And then she
Mm,
started to bully me in a horrendous way, like a really series of harassment. And
mm.
she tried to punch me, and then
Oh
also
my.
she cut my skirt in my locker room, and all kinds of stuff. But anyhow,
Ah,
I was very young, and I didn't know all kinds of energies and the healing and the emotions, etc. But just young, and then try to make sense of my everyday. But anyhow, on a day she made a statement to threat me like something, I decided, okay, I don't like this person, so she's crazy.
mm,
I'm not gonna get close to. Maybe this was
mm,
right, but what I wasn't seeing was I'm always somebody who everybody says, okay, Heiko looks very fun person, and she's very eclectic, and she's an artist, and I want to talk to her. Like people always have an interest in
mm,
me, thankfully.
mm,
So it's not very difficult for me to make friends in a new place, and then I'm very, chatty to get to know people and things like that. So when I started working in this workplace, everybody was, it's normal when new person come, but everybody was around me. And then
mm,
she felt very threatened. And then she was doing, whatever the nasty things to me by saying to everybody else, perhaps not me, don't hate me,
mm,
don't forget about me. But
mm.
yeah, so she
Okay.
became very jealous of me. And what I could have done, I mean, what I would do now if I was in the same situation, I wouldn't ignore her. I would probably, I don't really think her attitude is very good, but I can understand why she's feeling insecurity, and then that's part of the human nature. Although, in her case it was very extreme, but I wouldn't, I wouldn't, and not, I'm not stealing the show or anything, but I would probably try to balance out, um,
Mhm,
respecting her, her emotion and everything. But back then, I couldn't see that. because I just decided, okay, she's not part of my world. And then
Mm,
I'm not her world, because she's
mhm,
not nice to me. And then I also wasn't realized that how everybody was welcoming me, like, spending time with me, and then, really happy about having me around. And I didn't understand it. I mean, it was because it was normal to me.
mm,
But
yeah.
after that, as I started to view myself more like as a part of everything, and everything is part of me, I could
Mm,
appreciate that people appreciate having me around. That makes me one thing that I realize now as I spoke. When this person bullied me, because I was popular in a workplace, when
mm,
I like disconnected, when I decided to disconnect her from my life, I was
mm,
also disconnecting myself from others who were
yeah.
having fun with me. So I
Mm,
I didn't it didn't work for me. In the end, I felt very depressed, not really having fun, and then after all. So it's just like that. Yeah. So it really made me feel that way. So what about you? What is your experience?
with the Catrina, my experience goes to 2019. I was overworking. I was
Oh,
seeing, I can't remember, but I was possibly seeing seven, eight, clients a day,
wow.
doing, taking the kids to, to classes and, also, taking care of other, just
Mm,
family stuff, super busy, nonstop. In 2019,
mm,
at the beginning of when the whole before COVID,
thing. Yeah.
I was burning myself out, overworking as a workaholic,
Wow.
and suddenly I start getting this weird cold, flu-like, and then eventually I got feeling worse and worse and worse, and eventually, long story short, I got kidney failure.
Oh no.
So I was in kidney failure for it took me a couple of months to recover. And at this day, nobody knows what actually caused the kidney failure. And they rushed me to the hospital. I was
Mm,
3 days in the 3 days. I remember that it was on January the 1st,
mm,
2020. I
mm.
think that day I got released from the hospital.
Oh my God. Mm,
But Uh, but prior had this horrible pain that I've never experienced, and I don't wish anybody experienced this pain. In the sides of the kidneys, you feel like
wow.
somebody's hitting you with a metal tube in the side. It's horrible.
Oh.
So they rushed me to the hospital, and I was in excruciating pain. They treated me, and they told me, if you're my for those. Uh, Listening out there that they know numbers, my creatinine level. Usually the normal one is uh, point 0.8. That's the normal one, the creatinine
Okay.
level. So it's a marker for the kidneys. Mine was 9.7. So I was like at the sky roof, and there was something
Ah,
going on. So
yeah.
essentially, eh, I was at this point like to do dialysis. That's like if your
Mm.
numbers don't come down, we're gonna do dialysis on you.
Oh my God.
And through that days and nights in the hospital, it really gave me a lot of time to think about
Mm.
what am I doing? What am
Oh.
I doing with my life? Overworking myself and pushing and like it's
Yeah.
like as I think as people who work in this field, the medical
Mm.
field, the emotional field, we need to
Mm.
be very aware because a lot of times we can
Mm.
we can
Mm.
we can
Mm.
share options and we can offer a sense of guidance.
Yeah.
And then we need to remember that that also applies for ourselves.
Yes.
We need to be very conscious of that.
Yeah.
So I guess I forgot at that time.
Mm.
Of course I prayed, and I
Mm-hmm.
prayed,
Mm-hmm.
pray for the best. And one of those nights I had a dream. This missionary uh, priest pastor that used to be my spiritual guide, he passed away, years
Mm.
back. So I had a dream where he was present,
Mm.
and I asked him, and he was from Nicaragua.
Mm.
So he would say, "Oh, don't worry, you're gonna be fine, Che." In
Mm.
Spanish would be, "¿Qué tienes, Che? Vas a estar bien, no te preocupes." So I
Uh-huh.
had a dream of him telling me that.
Mm.
And then he said to me, "I have to go now. I have to go because, I have to be prepared to receive a lot of people
Mm.
they're gonna be coming."
Mm-hmm.
Then I woke up the next
Wow.
day, numbers started to come down,
Mm.
and then gradually, I got released from the hospital.
Wow. That's a very powerful dream.
And since there I recovered,
Mm.
and that gave me definitely a lot of depth. It gave
Mm.
me, you know, I consider myself to be an empathetic person, empathic person.
Mm.
I think it gave me even more sense
Mm.
of empathy for the people that are struggling with a chronic health issue, or just they're dealing with a very difficult time.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It feels like from listening to your story, it feels like when you experience that, it's different type of experience from mine, but we both realize that we are only here for a limited period of time, whatever that means. So
I know, right?
yeah, and then it's like
It's
it was a sort of reminder, like, are you sure, you're doing everything as you please, so is
Mhm.
it is it what you really really, are you
Yeah,
aware of what you are doing, kind of,
yeah,
so
yeah,
it's no longer like you don't take it for granted. So
yeah,
that's very very, powerful. It's very brutal, but it's very powerful. It gave me the sort of energy to 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 break down the whatever the barrier that I was feeling.
it gives us the possibility to connect with a different kind of strength, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
That's kind
yeah.
of where we grow
Mm,
in a
mm.
different way that is not adrenaline driven.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know?
Uh, Adrenaline driven reminds me of this thing. In Japan, we say when we see people, someone like that, we call it
Yeah.
he is or she is like a tuna, because the tuna fish
Oh,
dies when they stop. So it's
okay.
like yeah, we say that. But sometimes
Interesting.
sometimes
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if you are being like that, with a perception of, memento mori and then things, I think it makes somehow sense in a different way. But if you are just being just adrenaline driven for the sake of being adrenaline driven, and then it feels like you are afraid to stop because you don't want to think about your own mortality or something like that. It feels like,
Mm,
yeah. So,
yeah. I joke with Maritza sometimes, but
mm-hmm,
it's like true, as I say, hey, if I go first, I
mm,
want you to plan in my grave, if
mm-hmm.
I am to be, plant a plant of rosemary. I mean, I know that sounds a
Okay.
little bit crazy, but I
Why?
see I like the aroma.
Ah,
The smell of
okay.
rosemary is one of my
Mm,
favorite smells and aromas.
mm,
I really like it.
mm,
So maybe that's a crazy thing to say, but I I mean, I've seen people have roses, for example, or
Mm-mm.
people put recipes, in the grave. It's like, how to prepare pancakes,
Oh,
recipe by
wow.
this person, and that recipe is from, I don't know, the 1970s or something. It's like, whoa,
Hey.
you get to taste what people. Anyways, well, the tradition in here, Memento Mori, is also about that. Is in a way, it's a finding a sense of, yeah, mortality, but
Mm.
also not laughing at death, but
Oh.
also almost accepting, like, yeah, I am
Aha.
going. And in that acceptance, well, in this acceptance, I can tell my people to plant a rosemary, in my grave, or I'm going to leave a recipe for everybody. And
Aha.
because I understand at least a little bit more, you know that
Mm.
that my time is limited.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's a very interesting, yeah, episode. I didn't know that. Yeah.
What part?
The leaving recipes, or like when you said I asked Marisa to plant the rosemary, I wasn't quite sure where that's going, but that's as a sign, uh almost, yeah, like a marking that I accept that I have
Hmm.
to leave here one day, and
Yeah.
then and on my leaving, maybe some people will leave their favorite recipe, or maybe
Hmm.
some people will leave the favorite plants, or what have you, but that's like a, okay, I accept this, the
Yes.
mortality, and
Yes.
that's very, very nice. So yeah.
Okay. I think this
Yeah.
was a very interesting conversation. I mean, we're
Yeah.
just flowing with.
Hmm. Yeah, and but it's we spoke about this, the topic of mortality, and then connection to you become the part of the world, and the world is part of you, and I think it's very interesting. Yeah.
And it's also about us. It's also about
Yeah.
this is who we are. This has
Mm-hmm.
been some of our experiences. So if you have any experiences for the audience, if you want to share anything from your part about this podcast, this episode,
Mm.
we want to know. We read it,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm happy to listen to your own stories. And
yeah.
I think everybody has a story to tell. I think it enrichens, what's the word? It Yeah, it gives so much, when I hear these stories,
Mm-hmm.
and it just confirms and reconfirms again
Mm.
that we are all connected.
I agree. So yeah, so that means we are kind of opening our door for the listeners to bring their, stories as well.
If
Yeah.
they want. I mean,
Yeah,
if they
and
want,
then
we read
we
them.
can, yeah, and then we can probably discuss about it. So not really finding the answer or anything, but
No,
yeah,
just
we can just share it, and
hmm
share our point of views, or like maybe sometimes resonate with it. So yeah,
yeah.
that's good.
All right.
Okay, thank you for listening to us. And this is our fourth episode, and we will come back with another episode again. So until then, see you.
Thank you, everybody. Remember, stay curious,
Yes,
keep creating.
keep creating. Yeah.